that you had a previous life. And before we started recording this, we were talking about music, and it looked at one point like your career was not going to be in this world. Your career was going to be in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me that, like me, you left school early, although you came back and went to college.
Right.
Tell us about how you got involved in the music world, and what you were able to achieve before you got a real job.
Well, I'm sure, like you, music, when you have it, it's like this gravitational pull. And so I always had that since I was a kid, banging on pans because I wanted drums and my mom wouldn't buy them for me. All that stuff, sneaking into studios, doing all that stuff as a kid. And so when I got older, I really wanted I would be mixing music in my head. I really wanted turntables, was never allowed to have them because I was raised in a very strict Christian household where no rap was allowed type of thing. And that just made me want it more and more and more. Really into studying music. I have a brother who's 8 years older than me. So he kind of, I stole all of his CDs back when CDs were a thing.
Yeah.
And just got my music education from my older brother, my older cousins, et cetera, et cetera. And right around, I think 19, technology was on this exponential curve downward of what it cost to get into a studio. Before, when in the 90s or, even in the early 2000s, you had to go to a recording studio to get access to any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was right around like 03, 04, where all of a sudden Pro Tools was a thing, and, you could get a USB interface and have it at your house and get a MIDI keyboard, and all of a sudden you're making music. And I also lived in San Jose, where pirating software was like everybody's
rampant.
Exactly. So I think it was right in high school. I traded somebody like my Xbox for a pirated version of Pro Tools and a USB interface, and just taught myself how to do all this stuff because it wasn't there. And that grew and grew, and I learned how to record audio because of it. And then when I was in college, I got really interested on that. So I did an internship with a record label, and then I started selling their instrumentals to, licensing for TV. Still learning myself how to continue to engineer and engineering music on the side. And then, myself learning how to produce and just never leaving the studio. I remember being in the studio when I was 20 years old, and someone asked the biggest artist there, I won't name names because I don't want to be that guy, but who do you think is going to be the most successful if you had to pick somebody? And he said me, and I was flattered by it because I wasn't the best in the room, but he just said, because Nyle never leaves. He's just always here. He just never stops. And that was just kind of always my thing. And I was never the best at it, but I just loved it and would never disappear. So I really found my groove with sample-based hip hop. It just clicks with me. It makes sense. I came from the software world. I can see the wave files. I understand how to chop them up and make them sound like they came from the record. I've always been, a music history nerd. So it made sense. I knew which eras of jazz to go back to and find the chops. And when I realized, hip hop was so sample based, it just blew me away and just threw me into this music history lesson. So I love that. And that grew and grew and kind of created my own sound. And at the same time, LA was going through this transformation on like the LA beat scene. So you had the Flying Lotuses of the world that were coming out. The Low End Theory was exploding, and Boiler Room and all that stuff. So I was kind of following that sound and around in that area in San Diego. And it got to a point where I was talking to a couple bigger labels and got the offer to go on the road, and decided. So I was at 25 at that time, and I had my Series 7 65 and was working as a financial advisor, had my second child on the way, and just realized I didn't want to be on the road for 9 months of the year and not see my son and not see my new daughter. That was a surprise. We didn't learn whether or not we were going to have a boy or a girl with her. So I kind of, at that point, it was like, all right, I'm all in on finance. And, that was almost like, I don't know, leaving a parent or a piece of your soul behind. And I felt like, but it was also a relief that I'm all in on finance now. And little did I know that all of those skills that I had built and being an entrepreneur in the music world and publishing music, distributing music, building a social media following, doing all the art, coordinating music videos, all that extra stuff. Now that we are living in this totally digital work from home world, the lattice work that connects it all is so intertwined. Once I decided that I was all in on finance, it was a big breath of fresh air and relief that I knew what my future was like, and I could grab that by the horn, just like I did music. And little did I know how much of everything that I had done in the creative world was going to translate into everything that I was doing in the finance world, and how much of an edge that would give me, because I understood that creativity is a process. I understood how to put it all together. And from an entrepreneur's standpoint, like a musician standpoint, of how to think about design and coordinate teams and distribute it on digital platforms, and be okay with failure, because that's a big one as an artist, and being vulnerable. And then also thinking about all the technical kind of strategery that comes from the finance world, and that most people don't understand it, and that you need to be able to connect with the everyday person for it to even matter whatsoever. And all that kind of lattice work as it intertwines together has kind of brought me to where I am today. And the conversation that we're having, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for music, and I also wouldn't be here if it wasn't for finance. And so what a cool place. And I feel extremely fortunate that I'm able, a lot of people haven't made it out, and I feel like that's a blessing. And I want to continue to break down barriers of what it means to be a responsible financial services person, but then also know that, you can never turn your back on where you came from.
It sounds to me like you've had an interesting path and journey so far. And
so far.
That's well, more to come, right? That's the beauty of life. The journey is what it's all about, and hopefully we evolve and we take lessons with us, and get better at what we want to do, whether it's in our relationships or our business. But do you have a nostalgia for anything, whether it's a nostalgia for a time gone by, or a nostalgia for your early days in the finance world?
I mean, I love jazz stuff. So if you went through my records, which I have too many of, and they're very heavy when you move, as I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah, I just usually leave stuff behind, but there's other reasons why I'm running. But yeah.
Yeah, I love all my jazz records, to be honest. That's probably it. That's the most nostalgic that I get right there. And I remember just reading liner notes to learn about it, because nobody knew jazz around me in the Blue Note era specifically, which is where a lot of this stuff comes from. I love that era a lot. And I try to play it as much as I can around my kids. It fascinates me on the the improvisation that happens on those musicians, and it just makes my mind light up. So 100% that's there.
As you mentioned a little bit earlier in this conversation as well, you discovered jazz through hip hop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing. So let me ask you a couple of questions about a couple of songs. I was talking about being nostalgic or whatever. But what about a song from your past? Is there a song that you go back to? Is there a song that, when you're having a tough day, or if you just need to sort of connect to something, do you have something that is always on your playlist?
It's kind of funny you brought this up. I was listening to Hieroglyphics the other day for this very same reason. So Hieroglyphics is like a 90s hip hop group that came out of the Bay Area, and they're still going now. But they have a song called You Never Knew that I kept going back to. And then it made me think about all that kind of, it's like a smell, it brings you back to those days. And I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in San Jose. And so that the independent musician from that era, it means more to me than just the music. It makes me think about wanting to be a self-starter, to be ambitious, and to not let kind of the industry stop you from achieving what you want to get out of it. So that's definitely the one in the past couple of weeks that I've been spinning a bunch.
And then do you have a jam right now that you're listening to, or a band or an artist that you would like to turn other people onto? A big part of my career has been evangelizing the things that I like. I love sharing that with other people. Would you share a song right now that you're into?
I'm trying, I just pulled up my iTunes to see what I've been listening to the most. And the one that I guess I've been spinning a bunch is, and he's starting to blow up. His name's Benny the Butcher.
Oh,
he's
sure.
a rapper. And
I got to tell you something.
The song Legend has been on repeat for me.
I have to tell you something. Mm-hmm. You are the third advisor that I've spoken to.
No way.
That's funny. Who has shouted out Benny the Butcher. And I have to know what it is about Benny the Butcher that like gets you guys.
I guess, you know, to your nostalgia point, he the beats that he picks and his team picks are all very like 90s era grimy rap, like the Wu-Tang Clan style of beats. And then, you know, his rhymes are a bunch of multi-syllable, very lyrical type of beats or type of lyrics that he raps. And so because of that, you put them two together, it's kind of gives you that nostalgia, but then it's updated with a modern feel. And so that's where I could see guys that are in my age group pointing to him as someone, but it's just great music at the same time. So it all connects.
Well, we're in the process of putting a Spotify playlist together of recommendations from advisors and other people that we're speaking to, not just advisors. And I think there's going to be a couple of Benny the Butcher tracks. Listen, man, it's been great to meet you just briefly and connect, have a conversation. I love that you came to this world through music and that it still is there for you, you know, not just in your background listening to it, but it seems to be something that just is a part of who you are.
Thank you so much for having me, man. The pleasure's all mine, 100%.
Great talking to you.